Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to be here today to be talking about transforming our inner voice to transform our lives. I am here with Kimberly Adam Tufts, career strategist and coach, and we are so excited to bring you this. This has been a few months in the making, and I'm so glad we're finally here to make it happen. um, this is really important to both of us because we're both career coaches and we help women to advance their careers, and we see patterns among our clients and from our own experiences in where women struggle and where um, those challenges come from in the first place. So that's why our title today is Transforming Our Inner Voice, because so many times our struggles come from the story we're telling ourselves. So thank you so much for being here with me, Kimberly. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, Lori, thanks for having me. This is a very important topic for women in particular and people in general. And I primarily work with women and faculty women more specifically. And my vision is helping women to have more to be more satisfied and have more joy in their careers. So my little tagline I use a lot is I help faculty women to be promoted or seek tenure or grow their careers without sacrificing their personal relationships, their health, or their wealth.
Mm.
So with that, it's really something that I glean to. How can I empower women to still have the careers that they envision for themselves, yet have all the aspects that we know from a science basis, an evidence base that make up a fulfilling life?
Mm.
Because career is, if you look at the wheel of life, career is
Yeah.
just once on the wheel, right?
It's just one part of it. Yeah. We don't want one aspect of our lives to be all consuming. There's so many different parts that create a fulfilling life. So yes, so important to consider all of those different aspects to create a healthy environment for ourselves to enable us to be successful. So when we originally talked, we discussed how the language we use to describe women and how we talk about women can affect how women show up and how it affects women's performance in the workplace. And then we also, kind of veered into this other direction as well about how we talk about ourselves and how that can change how we show up individually as well. So tell me a little bit about what that looked like for you, what that looks like for your clients, how, how can we tell from your perspective, your experience, that we might be limiting our potential or the potential of others based on how we're speaking and communicating?
Well, I think of a classic, and I don't hear this that often, but I still hear it sometimes. Um, in some meetings in corporate as well as in faculty, the little woman.
Mm.
So, what is that about? What does it mean when we talk about someone's life partner as the little woman?
Mm.
And so that's a label that others put on ourselves. But we also, when we hear language, it can diminish or it can empower. And we take in language is only a part of communication, but we brings with it, because of how we're raised, our cultural norms, brings with it a lot of perceptions, expectations, and such. And so
Yeah.
when a life partner is described that way as the little woman, what does that say about the person's contribution
Yeah.
to uh, to life, to the family? And I also thought about. I just lost the one I was thinking about, but it's a biggie that I still hear, and I hear it all the time. Oh, often I'll hear women who assert themselves in the workplace described as, well, I won't use the B word. I will not use that word. but that's a terrible way to think
Yeah.
of them. But also described as aggressive rather
Right.
than assertive. I'll see the same behaviors or hear the same situation described.
Mhm.
Woman will get different labels, not all the time, this is a generalization, but often different labels will be attached to the woman's behavior versus a male in the workplace.
Mhm.
Those
100%.
are two. The
Yeah,
second is very common. It's still very common.
it's so
Little
common.
not as common, but I heard it. I heard Little Woman recently. That's why it came to me.
I've never heard that before. And maybe just because we grew up in different cultures. But I grew up in a culture where you just asked like the man like what he did for work, and
Mhm.
like most people, most couples both work, whether heterosexual, homosexual,
Yeah.
whatever the partnership is, most both people work these days. And so I always ask, like, oh, what do you and your spouse or partner do for work? Right. And some of them say, like, oh, he stays home, she stays home. Some of them say we both work. Right.
Right.
But assuming doesn't really help anyone, right? I think a lot of people have heard the term like assuming makes you and me an ass, like the word from assume. Yeah, assume.
Yes.
You using that
No,
that word to create that type of
that's from childhood, right?
yeah. Um, and so and maybe there's an assumption there too, assuming that both partners work, but um, Um, yeah, I grew up in a household where my mother had to be very subordinate to my father because he was highly aggressive. And so I learned that I was supposed to be subordinate and I was punished whenever I acted assertively. And I was one of those kids that was just like serious and down to earth and a natural leader. Like I could tell when adults weren't competent. I could tell who would be the right person to go to advice for.
Mhm.
And so I had all of these misconceptions about, you know, what women in the workplace, you know, who they were, like all the labels. I wrote a post recently about how like for a long time until I realized that like my self-actualization was not going to be achieved just being a mom and a wife. It
Mm.
wasn't going to happen. And my fulfillment is more than that. Not that there can't be fulfillment from that. My sister's a stay-at-home mom, absolutely loves it, super fulfilled, brings her tons of joy, and that's great. For me, there's more that has to be accomplished. I'm just not fulfilled doing that. And so once I realized that my self-actualization was going to be more than that, I was like, telling myself all of these shameful,
Mm.
truths that I'd learned as a child, like corporate women are selfish. Oh my gosh, how could they possibly abandon their children and have someone else care for them?
A
Like
bit-
it's so ridiculous thinking about that. Um, but that's just one of the things. And then when I was at university, I had my daughter when I was doing my undergrad, and people would ask me all the time, "So, what do you do with your daughter when you're in school?"
oh,
Like, and so because it's such a stupid question,
yeah.
I started answering it with a very straight face and be like, "Oh, we just leave her at home. She fends for herself pretty well." And they're like, "How old is she?" And I was like, "Oh, she's 1." And then they'd just be like, "Oh, okay." Like, yeah, I gave you a stupid answer because it was a stupid question.
Oh, oh.
Anyways, so and I asked my husband, I'm like, "Honey, do you ever get this question?" He's like, "No."
Yeah,
Because, like, she's with a babysitter.
yeah,
And so and I know and I hear from other women too, like they get similar questions in the workplace. um and so you automatically then ask yourself like, oh, should I be leaving my child with someone else, right? So
right.
think about what you say before you say it. um It's just it just made my eyes roll. Like, why are you asking me this
Yeah,
question? I'm
why
just gonna leave her at home. Like, yeah, that's what happens.
and I wonder how often that's asked of a man in the
Right.
workplace.
That's why I asked my husband, I'm like, do you get this question?
Yeah,
No, I
I
didn't.
wonder how often. And when we're talking about language, language can be very powerful. I see women's groups sometimes, or warrior women. So that denotes something, something pretty powerful most times. It's not
Mhm.
seen as a negative. I had a client recently though, and she's in an academic setting and was in a department, and it's a helping professions, which is very interesting. So all these people are helping professionals,
Mhm.
counselors, okay. And she said to me that she wasn't viewed as threatening in her department, particularly when she did not have a permanent job or tenure before she
Mhm.
obtained tenure. She wasn't viewed as threatening in her department. And when she began to speak up, because she's decided there's things need to be a little different here, and I want to be an advocate for the students. I want to
Mhm.
advocate for some of the more early career. They used to be called junior. See, words are important. Used to be called junior faculty. We no longer say that. Early career faculty. And I'm going to start making suggestions. And it's interesting because I don't know that I've ever heard a man be called this. So she said, someone said to me, well, it's because you were perceived as a dumb blonde.
Mhm.
Really? I don't know that I've ever heard of a man being called or that label attached to being blonde. I don't
Yeah.
think I ever have. And I said, are you serious? And she said, yes. I mean, someone said this to me, but they were trying to quickly use language to give me a sense of how I had been or had been perceived.
Mhm.
And so I think the language is appropriate at that, because you get a whole lot of additional information, or you can make a lot of assumptions. We need to validate them, but you can make a lot of assumptions about how people perceive someone that they call a dumb blonde,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 100%.
So think
Um,
about that. Think about the power of, even
mhm.
if they didn't say it, but but think about the power of someone being labeled that way.
Yeah.
It's not empowering to the person, I don't think, but the power and what it denotes to the other people in the environment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. By the way, anyone who's here, if you have questions, want us to answer, feel free to put them in the comments and tell us where you're from. We're here to do that. So we'd love to answer any questions you have live. Um, and how we speak to ourselves
Oh,
makes a big difference in how we show up. And it can be really difficult to pay attention to how we're speaking to ourselves because it's so subconscious.
yeah.
But until we make the subconscious conscious, we will call it fate. We have to know what it is we're telling ourselves because it affects how we show up. I tell people frequently in the DMs when they're saying like I'm feeling a lack of confidence, it's like if you believe that you can achieve this, even if it's just a little bit,
Yeah.
like start telling yourself that all of the things that you can do over and over again. If you do that, then you're going to show up as more confident. And I'm not a proponent of fake it till you make it. I'm a proponent of channeling your higher self and channeling other people's power who you want to be like
Uh-huh.
to then show up as who you really want to be. Like fake it till you make it does not work. Science backed strategies do. So mimicking others' behaviors, who you want to be like, right? If you want to show up like Sheryl Sandberg or Ellen DeGeneres,
Uh-huh.
whoever it might be who you admire, who you want to be like, if you can absorb their energy and then put that out, people will then treat you just as confident as you show up as. People take cues and how confident they should feel in you directly from you. So if you're going to want, if you want people to treat you like you are a badass, competent person, then you have to communicate that you are competent. And so all of those cues that you're putting forth, right? If you're slumping over versus sitting up straight, people
Mhm.
are going to know if they should treat you as capable as you really are. So be conscious of what it is that you're telling yourself, and then be conscious of your nonverbal communication, because people, it's literally like 50 milliseconds.
Yeah,
People judge us that quickly. That's what science says, to determine how they feel about us, how much they believe in our competence, how comfortable they feel with us, all of those different things. And not that we should care in a great amount what other people think.
yeah,
However, we do have to be pragmatic and understand that other people make decisions about what opportunities they give us. Other
yes,
people make decisions on how much power and influence and what they're willing to share with us. And so we have to adjust to a certain extent how we communicate in order to achieve the outcomes and achieve the goals that we have for ourselves. And so, and before anything else, we should be living in line with our values. So if a certain, like piece of advice from someone doesn't feel in line with who we are, then right, there are probably other pieces of advice that can communicate competence, other mannerisms, whatever it might be,
mhm,
that can communicate that level of confidence that you want to, that still enables you to feel like you're being true to yourself. So keep that in mind with everything that you have going on, that you 100% stay true to who you are above everything else when you're trying to achieve your goals.
well, Lori, you said so much. And when I say that, I mean that you said so much that's valuable in what you just shared with us. So it's the second time today that I heard someone say, which is interesting to me, I don't believe in fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It's the second time today. And you know, that's so key. And then you also said, show how we show up is how people will judge us, and they only have, 10 to 30 seconds for that impression to be made, right? Um, and what reminded me when we're talking about transforming our inner voice is a couple of things. People will judge us, but first, how are we judging ourselves? When we're thinking about how we talk to ourselves, our inner voice, the words and labels we use to uh, describe ourselves to ourselves, or but I did a post the other day and I asked the question, are you your biggest? So are we our biggest advocate? Are we our biggest cheerleader? Are we our biggest inspiration?
Hmm.
Or are we our biggest critic?
Yeah. I have to ask myself sometimes, like, am I taking my own advice? Right? Because I advise my clients to be kinder to themselves all the time. And like, would
Yes.
you say that to your coworker? Like, oh, so stupid. Why did I do that? Like, would you really tell your coworker, oh my gosh, you were so stupid. Why did you do that?
Yeah.
We don't talk to most people do
But
not talk to other people like that.
no, we don't. You
Yeah.
know, and as coaches, we know about transformation. And I was thinking about the steps of transformation. But today, where I heard that before, don't believe in fake it till you make it and it doesn't work, is I attended a session on imposter syndrome today.
Mm.
What I thought that was really interesting, how we speak to ourselves, I heard. So she described, I think, 5 or 6 archetypes of imposter syndrome. And one is superhero. And I could kind of relate to that. That's the person who's working, 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 doing for family, doing for
Mm.
a job. But she said that is coming out of that being everything for everybody is coming out of a sense of inadequacy.
Mm.
So this is what she said. This is something for you folks who could relate to that to say to yourselves, to yourself, I am enough. I have enough. I've done enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we the person that cheers ourselves on, that holds ourselves accountable? And you said that, would you speak to a coworker? And when I was thinking about transforming our inner voice, I thought about the 4 steps of transformation. Step back, let go, say yes to self, empowered action / accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the questions. I'm trying to remember where I was thinking about that should be. But asking yourself, under stepping back, because stepping back is a reflective stage where we're increasing our awareness and assessing and being reflective. When you're thinking about transforming your inner voice, you could ask yourself, how would I speak to a treasured friend or relative?
Right.
Right? Under stepping back, becoming aware of how we're talking to ourselves, communicating with ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, um, and also with stepping back, sometimes folks, and I thought it was wonderful at this session today talking about normalizing imposter syndrome. Um, but sometimes we think about we we have fear, and so instead of recognizing that fear is normal, real, we all have it based on different things we're going to do in our life, right? But in thinking about not seeing fear as this extreme weakness, because it's not the fear that makes us that a weakness or keeps us from progressing. It's not having self leadership where we can move ahead or do
Mm.
something despite the fear, right?
Right. Because bravery isn't a lack of fear, it's acting despite the fear that you're
Yeah,
still feeling.
right. So if we're talking about talking to ourselves, if we have some fear about something, maybe we're new at something, or we're shifting what we do with our business or with our career, or something new in our family, acknowledging, well, I'm not that comfortable with that right now. So I have some anxiety, I have some fear, and not saying, oh, you're so dumb, you're so weak. Why can't I do that? No, well, why not flip that? Because, when we talk about empowered action, reframing is important. Oh, I haven't done that yet, or I'm new at this, but look, I've done this, this, and this. I want to do this, this, and this, but I have done this and this.
Yeah, it's so easy for me to be critical of myself with how much I'm getting done every day with my business or how much I'm not.
Yes.
And I 100%, if I was talking to a client and they were telling me the same things, I would be like, well, look at everything that you have done.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would tell them. And so I have to remember those same principles. Not that we shouldn't strive for excellence, we should, to achieve greatness, but you know, part of striving, part of being excellent is loving ourselves.
Whoa.
It
Whoa.
really is.
Say that again.
And because how many people do you think in the world truly do? So if we're going to be excellent, then
Yeah.
and achieve great things, we better believe in ourselves and be kind to ourselves, because we know that if we're in a healthy environment, we're more likely to thrive. And are we creating that environment for ourselves? Are
Mm-hmm.
we creating that healthy environment where we can thrive?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have more control over our life frequently than we think we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so control what we can, and we 100% control that narrative we're telling ourselves. So create an environment where you can thrive, telling yourself all of those things that you would want a best friend telling you.
So to me, you're giving us some insights, some strategies for for shifting, because so many of us um, are not our best friend,
Mm-hmm.
not the best friend to ourselves, or we're not our number one advocate, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the language that was used while growing up, or sometimes in society, sometimes depending on what sector we work in, right? Um, we take that in and then we sometimes apply it to ourselves.
Yeah.
You're saying no, acknowledge the progress, right?
Hmm.
Step back and think about how we're speaking to ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Um, and one other thing that like is so important to me because of the type of environment that I grew up in
Mhm.
is how we speak to ourselves usually ends up showing up when we're giving advice, when we're parenting, when we're mentoring someone else, because our own insecurities, we frequently are like, oh, I don't want anyone else to feel insecure in the same way I do. And so I'm going to give advice to help them not feel insecure. But frequently, our coping mechanisms for not feeling insecure aren't always the healthiest because it's just passed down from parent to child, from parent to child, from mentor to mentee. And so, are we like when we're giving advice, is it out of insecurity, out of protecting our ego, not in a sense of like an inflated ego, just protecting ourselves and helping ourselves feel safer and calmer and like, feeling less anxiety? Or is it, I'm going to challenge myself to be better? Is that the advice? Because like if you can categorize that a little bit,
Mhm.
then we're better able to, create an environment, like I said, for ourselves and for others, where the language that we're using to talk to ourselves and the language that we're using internally and externally ends up, becoming our fate because
Mhm.
we haven't been able to label it in such a way that tells us if this is good for us or not. So if we can do that, then it's so much easier to know, okay, I need to change this or I need to keep this and, go down a different path or continue down this road.
Wow. So if I heard you right, if I got it right, you're saying that, think about what we may need to change.
Mm-hmm.
And in giving advice to others or counseling others, because we don't, if we're good people, we don't want people to have the same experience that may not be
Right.
positive for us. But work on that inner, what I call the inner game, right? So that we'll be more effective and better at the outer game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
such a good way to put it.
That yes, and you're so right. The person that at the other session today said the one thing, there's nothing wrong with being new at something or trying something new, and no one starts out as a master of anything, right?
Right.
Being a novice is very natural, and we move from not being a novice, hopefully, to being competent and sometimes experts, depending on what it is and what our interest is.
Right.
But she said the thing that I would call you on is if you are working with other people and you have these great evidence-based strategies that you provide to them and you don't practice it yourself.
Right.
I was like, oh, so we're talking to our clients about how to view themselves and support themselves and hold themselves accountable and acknowledge the achievements that they've made. But if we're not doing it to ourselves and talking to ourselves in that way, how
Yeah.
valuable is it really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Agreed. Well, we were about out of time. Thank you so much for doing this with me, Kimberly. I know it's been months in the making, so I appreciate you being patient and helping make this a reality for me and our audiences. Is there anything that you would like to share before we sign off?
Um, I want to thank you once again because I think this is a very important topic. And I think that, when we think about transformation and then we step back, we let go, we say yes to self, we have to take it into action so it becomes natural for us.
Mhm.
So I think it's always important to think about, remember, small hinges swing big doors. What
Yeah.
you can do in the next week to move yourself 1% closer. Nothing happens overnight. Also thinking about if we need support to make it happen. Of course, this is an oldie but a goodie. Practice, 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 and constantly reframe. Think about our progress and achievements rather than what we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we can think about everything that we have accomplished and, if we're having those hard days, like, remember you've gotten through every single other hard day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have. Um, so, for anyone who is listening, if you would like to work with me or consider, learning more about my services, I am offering a temporary 12-month payment plan for anyone who wants to sign on to any of my programs for public speaking coaching, career coaching, helping you advance internally, build your confidence, or accelerating your job search. Then I would love to have a conversation with you for a free 1-hour career strategy call. And Kimberly, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, as always, through LinkedIn, you can direct message me. You can also email me. And this is Kimberly Adams Tufts, right? So my nickname is Cat Wellness at Gmail. I'm
Great.
sorry, Cat Wellness 2 at gmail.com.
Okay,
Website
amazing.
is Cat Wellness, catwellness.com. So
Amazing.
I look forward to, and I thank you for your services, Lori, because this is well needed. And all of us need support as we continue to better ourselves and strive for more and realize our dreams in this world.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And for everyone else who attended today, feel free to drop us any questions in our DMs, and we will see you on LinkedIn. Everyone have a fabulous week.
Bye bye.